I'm the old foot. Introducing Bruce Robertson, Bob Jamieson, Harold Lock were the builders of the first tank stock car in New Zealand. This was built at Jamieson Services, Main Street, Palmerston North. The interviewer is David Popperwell, Sound and Vision, Sean Bayliss of the Military Sound. We're at Robertson Holden, Rangatiki Street, Palmerston North. Today is Monday the 4th of August 2014. Over to you, David.
Well, way back in the late 60s, there was a need seen by a Palmerston North driver to build something completely new and something radical. Stock cars had been running in the country from about 1963, and they'd been running about perhaps 8 years at this point when Palmerston North driver Bruce Robertson decided that maybe there was a better way to build it. He was running a modified car, originally a modified car, turned into a stock car, 99p I think at the time. Bruce, was that your motivation for starting to build the tank? Were you dissatisfied with what you had, and you just wanted a car that could do more?
Not really. It was Bob Jamieson that really sowed the seeds originally, and of course traditional stock cars were what everybody had, and you didn't ever think of anything different or anything radical like the tank turned out to be. But Bob had talked about making a TQ midget, a monocoque one, and sort of said, hey, I think that might even work for a stock car, and that's where it sort of started. We didn't ever dream that it would be so powerful and strong and invincible that that was not in our minds at the time. I don't think, was it, Bob?
No, well, really what it was, we were racing with drums in the windrow, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So all the old Fords and that used to get right up on top of the drums and couldn't get off, and they'd go over the windrow and the wheels would bottom out. So the idea was we made a low car, so it bulldozed it and slowed it down as it went, and the fence line backed out and kept on driving, and that was one of the... And if it rolled on a drum, it just rolled straight underneath it because there was nothing to catch underneath the bottom of it. It was one of the projects of it, yeah.
And obviously, from that original idea, you said to Bruce, again, look, I think this might work, let's have a crack.
Yep.
And what did you think, Bruce? Were you confident of what Bob was telling you? Or did you think he was pulling a left one?
No, I thought Bob was a mad scientist at the time, actually, but it sort of got something clicked in my brain, and I thought, well, hey, there's probably merit here. It's certainly worth investigating. So I sat down and on a couple of sheets of paper, and I sort of sketched things and tried to get concept of how it'd look and what it'd, what the general shape of it would be. And eventually, I think after about 40 odd hours, I had a bit of a general idea of what we could have progressed onto, and sort of showed it to Bob at the odd time, and we went from there. And then Bob said, well, hey, if you can make this thing, well, there's no reason why we can't make it out of plate, which was, and the radical plate in those days was a steel called Core 10, and sort of roughly twice the strength of normal mild steel, and although a little bit difficult to weld, today it's no problem, of course, with all the modern TIGs and MIGs and that sort of thing. But that's where it really went, and Bob said, see what you can do. And I spent another probably 80 hours cutting out cardboard and gluing it all together, and all the little inserts in between the front bumper and the side rails and the rear wheel guards, and eventually got a scale model that was probably that size, was it?
Was. Yeah, about an A4 size, wasn't it?
What was the final design? After you ticketed around with a bit of paper, had the design changed substantially from when you started till the end of it? Did you look at things and say, well, that looks a bit crazy, that's not going to work?
Not really.
Not really, because I'd put so much thought into it in that first 40 odd hours to try and get the concept right, didn't we?
And the stock car we was using was quite successful for its body chassis dimensions, wasn't it?
Yeah, the little 99 car.
It might have been a bit shorter than most cars would have been, but
yes.
Yeah.
It had a short wheelbase, which meant that it was very good on cornering. You could usually go into a corner and go under a car, and that was where we aimed for with this. With
I
this
think it
new
was
car.
only 88-inch wheelbase or something on it, the first one.
86-inch wheelbase.
Yeah.
Very, very short by
Yeah.
today's
It
standards.
made everything be quite compact.
Yeah.
So you built the model,
Yeah,
or did you just bring in a drawing?
Well, I said to Bruce, if
No, I had a drawing. The original drawing's just down there on the floor.
have you got that?
Still got it here.
Yeah, well,
and then I've got the original plans as well there that you must have drawn up.
Oh, okay. Because I've got some of them because then I did it on a third scale. And the reason was because all the plate had to be cut out of the building and pressed and bent, the idea was to kit set it as much as we could. So when I went down to AF Martin's to do it, the time consumed to do everything. If you cut one for the left-hand side, it was going to go the opposite way round on the right-hand side. So you made a pair of everything you wanted, which saved a lot of mucking around here.
So there are lots of chalk lines on the garage at Jemison Services there where we're fine-tuning things.
We
Howard would be rubbing them out. We'd be putting new lines down again. And
And
But
getting
we
confused
would
on the
spend-
old lines and the new lines, and you were almost the school teacher, Howard. You'd be there rubbing the chalk
I
off.
was a school teacher and I was very observant as to what was going on.
Did you at any? I mean, when you were first introduced to what Bruce was, I mean, firstly, how did you guys come together on this? How were you becoming involved?
Originally, I helped Bruce with his old car and just carried on from there.
Yeah.
When you first heard about this mythical new car coming along, what did you think? Did you think, gee, this looks exciting? Did you think, no, this is going to be too heavy, it's not going to work?
I really had no idea what they were doing originally, right at the very, like when Bruce was making his model and that. When I first sort of got to realise what they were about to do was when I saw the model, the cardboard model that Bruce had made.
And what did you think?
I looked at it and thought, yeah, it's certainly different.
Is different the word, or did you have any? I mean, were you totally confident? Did you go,
Well-
wow, this is going to be really something?
Well, not really having an engineering background, I didn't really. But I looked at quite closely at the model and I thought, oh yeah, there's a lot of merit in some of like the very flat floor and all the bits that they were trying to do. I knew that Bruce, when he raced the old car, it was pretty sickening to get stuck in the windrow all the time. And that was. You're not racing when you're sitting in the window.
No, you're just sitting
so
there
I
doing
could see
absolutely
that
nothing.
side of it, but yeah.
So Bruce, you had the model, you had the plans, you went back to Bob, and you said, here it is, do it. Is that pretty much how it came together?
yeah, pretty much. I think Bob had always said if you can make a model, we should be able to. And Bob then had to calculate the amount of steel that went into the vehicle, and then we ran around finding engine blocks and seats and wheels and tyres to try and figure out what the overall weight was going to be. We were dead scared we could have been either underweight or horribly overweight.
The whole car was pulled to pieces, the old car, and everything was weighed. The wheels and the front suspension and the diff and everything was weighed, because then the motor, because then you had to decide where the motor had to sit to get the 60-40 ratio for your front to back. So that's why it became the motor sat so far back, because, and then we sort of said this is where things have to be. The front axle's got to be there, that's the back axle, and the motor's got to sit there, and that was the design.
Bruce, did you have a bit of a list of what the car had to be, like what you wanted out of the car?
I don't think so. It was just the principle that Bob had put into my head that plate on edge will be a lot stronger than, box section or pipe or whatever else. And if we could take advantage of this plate being on edge, it should make a strong car. But hey, we didn't really know. It was totally untried. Today when you look at it, it's not so daunting. But to start from where we were, you just had nothing like it, or nothing ever been conceived like it, and we just worked to do the best, I suppose, to make sure everything was in the right place and balance was right, and the design factors went into it, didn't it, from there?
Yeah, I before that was built, I did a two passengers monocoque sports car. It was going to be an aluminium body, and I had all the drawings for that, so I had some idea of how to put the thing together. So when he saw the midget, of course it was just a V, but the one I've got still like going to build one day when I get there. Was a two-seater with a rear engine sitting across the back of the seat, of like using a Morris Minor, the mini motor type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was my concept of the first monocoque I was going to be involved with.
So we had a situation where we had the plans, we had the model.
Yep.
You were sent away to work out the steel part
I became a
of it.
babysitter.
Yep.
My wife went to hospital to have a little mould taken off her back, which
Yep.
ended up to be like that, you know, and the complications. So I had about 3 weeks or 4 weeks looking after kids and doing all the drawings for it. So that sort of, I had to be there to look after the kids anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So that's how the quarter of 3 third scale drawings got made. So when we come to cut the plate and everything, we knew exactly what to angle, everything to cut it at.
But still at the stage, you still had no idea whether you were going to be on weight,
Oh
underweight,
yeah,
overweight.
it was made out of 6 sheets of plate. It couldn't
Yeah,
be
we
any
did
more
quite-
than 6
yeah.
sheets of plate.
And you managed to get everything out of it. It's
Yeah.
almost like play school in a way. I mean,
Oh, it was like a jigsaw puzzle. So the idea was that you didn't want a lot of plate left over because you didn't cut right. So I made sheets a scale of an 8x4 sheet and did the cut line, so I only had little bits of scrap left over, which made it very economical and a lot better for when we were paying to get it cut.
Bruce, there must have been at some stage you had to decide how much is this car going to cost. I mean, it had to, if it was going to be huge, it might have to go on the back burner. But you obviously
No, it was never
I don't
ever
even think it was
considered.
discussed.
We never thought about it.
it was too frightening.
There were people that
No, there was never even, it was never done for money.
No,
It was done as a hobby.
yeah, for our enjoyment. really.
Basically, to see whether it could be done and how it was
Well,
going
no,
to
it
work.
wasn't even to
Challenge,
see
yeah.
whether it could be done. It was just once we started on
Just a
it, we knew what our aim was, and everybody worked. And there were various people that did come in from time to time and put a few hours in, or a
Sure.
few nights, or few days, few weeks.
So the construction, the start of the construction, where did you begin? The chalk lines on the garage floor, Howard?
Pretty basically, yeah.
And then what
To see-
happened? What was part
well,
two
then-
after that?
Then Bob sort of knew what he was about. It's sort of, we went through that side of it, and then the sheets were just marked out,
Yeah,
and away we went.
So the start was what, like the tub, the main part of the
the
car?
centre U,
Yeah.
the 3 sheets. They were cut and folded, the back one, the middle one, and the front one, and then they were all welded together as a tub.
Yep.
And then the front and back bumpers just went on naturally, and then the side rails were put on afterwards.
You're making it sound like it's a very, very simple thing, but there must have been some headaches involved. There must have been the odd problem that came along.
The biggest problem after that would have been, because you've drawn it, you actually, I know that that member in here has to be a given length, so there's no, let's make what we wanted. We cut it as a proper jigsaw puzzle. So it just virtually went into place, and because I took it away up to pennies to get welded, because we didn't have a welder capable of welding it, and then we took the whole tub up and then put the outsides around it. So yeah, it was a method. You couldn't do anything much else than follow. You've got to start with the tub in the middle and work out what's there.
So there was no sort of halfway through and think, well, we'll just make a small change here or a small change there, whether the odd change, or did you pretty much stick to the plan right through to the end?
I don't recall ever making any
Well-
changes except maybe might be another bracket to hold a radiator or things
Sure.
like that.
But say the hole for the diff was already pre-cut to the plate before it even got folded, and so for the front axle. So lots of holes and positions were already decided before it got made.
everything had been calculated
Yeah.
accurately, and it was just a case of
Just
Produce it.
Yeah.
So Howard, the car started to take shape. You were involved, obviously many hours. Nothing difficult, straightforward.
No.
Because it was a radical car, did that create any particular problems, or was it just pretty much plain sailing to get it
No,
constructed?
it pretty much went pretty straight, plain sailing. When it came to fitting up steering and things like that, there was a bit of discussion.
Yeah.
And that's when we used to sit down and talk about how to go about it. And, yeah.
But between the three of you, There was nothing that really stumped you. There was no. You didn't
No.
get to a stage where you think, "Gee, we didn't think about this. Gee, what are we going to do with this?"
Not that I can remember, no.
The holes in the back, which are pretty much standard of all tanks,
Yeah.
are they there as a weight saving?
No, well, what they were done for is that we wanted to put the guards on. The original tank had guards
Yep.
all round. And because that took another sheet of plate, we had to get a sheet of plate out of what we'd built. So the idea was to cut the holes in along around it and everything. And don't forget, 1 square foot of it only weighs 8 pounds. So you've got to cut quite a few holes to get the weight out of things.
Yeah.
So, but originally the front guards were right over the front wheels, but Ray New wouldn't let us race with those.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about that in just a little while, but if we talk about the original concept, safety, of course, was always going to be important.
Yeah.
What considerations, Bruce, did you have on the safety side of it? I mean, I know you built a very big seat in that car, and that must have been a consideration, and also what else was in the car that was going to potentially damage the driver in the event of some major action?
Well, we had plenty of padding on the side panels beside you, didn't we? We made big
Yep.
covers up and had
That's
them upholstered so that there was a decent foam pad on each side, so that in a crash your elbows and whatever else legs fly around and you.
Well, the rule book said that there had to be so many inches from the centre of the driver to the side of the car. That's mandatory. But if you get over a certain distance, you can use 1/8 plate instead of 3/16. So that's why the back channel was made so wide. So all of those things, but safety was a parameter, you know.
Coming back to the body, Hillman Imp, was that planned in the early days? Was it sort of structured to fit something like that, or was it just that somebody said, "Hey, that Hillman Imp cut down could suit"?
I don't remember how it came
No,
about.
I don't know. You used to drive around on the road, so I was.
Yeah, we had 2 of them in the yard making it.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that we looked at one of the imps. Bruce, I remember.
Well, we needed something with a very short back.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was the problem. was to
Yes.
find
And when you actually looked at it, well, it fitted quite well, didn't it?
Most cars were running V8 coupe bodies in those days, and there was no way you could get a V8 coupe body to
Even looked like it.
look like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a mini body didn't look quite right, and we came up with this Hillman Imp body
And-
that we.
So the body itself, when the car was done, before we get into the mechanics, the car was finished and it had its own particular look, which is kept true even today. They're still pretty much a similar overall shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's move on to components, suspension. What were your considerations there, and what was available, and did you have options, and how did you finally choose what you came up with?
We used a transverse front spring because that had certain advantages. I don't know whether the 99
It was a
car
V8.
had a. It's a
just
side
an
valve,
ordinary
yeah,
side valve
46
V8,
V8
front axle.
front axle and the transverse spring, and in the rear we used Austin Cambridge springs, I think they were, and then we built up some anti-tramp bars as well
At
to
the
stop
top,
stop the diff from
Yeah, it was
hopping
a
down the
34
track.
Dodge diff,
It was
wasn't
a 34. It was a 34 Dodge diff of a 4.3 ratio, and most diffs were 3.9, 4.1, but with the Mustang motor and the way it would rev, you needed a 4.3, or could have even done with a 4.4, 4.5 for some of the smaller tracks like Wanganui, I guess.
So the wheels and tyres, pretty much self-explanatory.
Well, you had to use road tyres.
In those days,
Yeah,
there were
yeah.
no race tyres.
No race tyres.
No,
No.
I think they only had 13-inch at the front and 15s at the back.
15-inch. We used Dunlop SPs at
Aquajets.
Aquajets.
Yeah.
Aquajets had just
Was
come
it
out.
SPs or Aquajets?
I think it was Aquajets just
Aquajet.
came out,
Yeah.
yeah. So the Jaguar Aquajet was
Yeah.
about the right
That was
size.
the bigger size tyre
go
that
on
we
the
could
back,
put.
yeah. And on the front we just used 13-inch. And a lot of them we used to use the old Reliance retread, I don't know,
Suburban.
which was a
Snow tree.
Which used to blow half a lap before a major championship.
yeah.
Yeah, and we know about that. So if we look at the materials used, there was X amount of steel. Bob, do you still remember in your mind today roughly I think it was so many sheets of certain steel. Was it 5 sheets or something? You cut everything out of?
Or the weight, we couldn't use any more than 6 sheets.
6 sheets. Yeah.
That was our total limit we could
Yeah.
use. Yeah.
It would have been slightly exciting, I guess, to build the car and then put it over the weighbridge and find out how much it exactly weighed, because a lot of it was pretty good guessing, but you never really knew, did you, until you were...
Yeah, well,
we had a few on
as I said, before we even built the car, we'd weighed every component, radiators, everything to know what our total weight would have been.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'd have to think about how you're going to make the chassis lighter. Because the rest of the things you couldn't alter.
So 1,500 weight, I think, was your weight maximum at that
Yeah,
time?
I think it was.
Yeah.
1,500 weight. Now, of course, it's 1,500 kilos, which is a little different.
little bit more.
Little bit more today.
Yeah.
So it was built. Red was the colour